Join Facts First as we present Aneta Corsaut reveals why she refused to marry Andy Griffith.
Aneta Corsaut wasn't just Helen Crump from the Andy Griffith Show. She was the woman who captured Andy Griffith's heart both on and off screen. To the world, she was graceful, but behind the smiles and southern charm of Mayberry, her life was far more complicated. Her connection with Andy wasn't just good acting, it was real. What started as on-screen chemistry soon spiraled into a secret affair that became one of Hollywood's quietest scandals. Yet beyond all the rumors and hidden glances was the story of a woman whose life ended far too soon, leaving behind unanswered questions and a mystery that still lingers decades later. So what really happened between Aneta Corsaut and Andy Griffith? And what led to her untimely death? Join us as we get into all the details. The real woman behind Mayberry's most beloved teacher. Aneta Corsaut's story didn't begin in Hollywood. It began in the small town of Hutchinson, Kansas, where she was born to Jesse and Opal Corsaut. Her parents were both teachers for a time, and that love for learning ran deep in her blood. Annetta often talked about how her mother had taught school, and her father, before becoming a plant pathologist, had done the same. Education, it seemed, was a part of her DNA. But even with such a grounded upbringing, Annetta had her eyes set on something bigger. She majored in drama at Northwestern University, where her passion for performance started to bloom. Yet, in true Hollywood fashion, destiny had other plans. During her junior year, Annetta made a bold decision. She dropped out of college to chase her acting dream full-time. She packed up, moved to New York City, and began her journey in the mid-1950s, studying with the legendary Lee Strasberg, the same man who trained some of Hollywood's greatest stars. Her big break came in 1958 when she landed her first film role alongside a then-unknown Steve McQueen in The Blob, a low-budget horror film that would later become a cult classic. It wasn't conventional, but it was her ticket in, and that was all she needed. From there, television started calling. In 1961, Annetta got her first regular TV role as Irma Howell on Mrs. G Goes to College, a light-hearted CBS sitcom that gave audiences a glimpse of her charm and talent. Then came the role that would change everything. In 1963, Annetta walked onto the set of The Andy Griffith Show for an episode titled Andy Discovers America. She was only supposed to appear once, playing a local school teacher who taught little Opie Taylor. But the chemistry between Helen and Sheriff Andy Taylor was undeniable, too real, too electric to ignore. Viewers instantly fell in love with her. Before long, Helen Crump wasn't just a guest character. She became the woman Andy loved, both on and off the screen. Annetta adored playing Helen. It wasn't just a role to her, it was something she grew with. She would return to play Helen again in the spin-off Mayberry RFD and later in the made-for-TV movie Return to Mayberry. Fans got to see Helen and Andy's story come full circle, their marriage, their child, and their happy ending. But behind the scenes, that love story wasn't just fiction. Interestingly, life kept circling her back to education. Even before she stepped into Helen Crump's shoes, Annetta joked that she couldn't seem to escape classrooms. She once told the Chicago Tribune that her first regular TV role had her playing the wife of a schoolteacher. It was as if teaching kept following her wherever she went. And ironically, while pretending to be a teacher, Annetta found herself drawn back to school in real life. During her time on The Andy Griffith Show, she started taking night classes at UCLA, determined to finish what she had started years before. She told the Shreveport Journal about how she had taken a course in physical geography, not expecting much from it, but ended up loving it. The professor even encouraged her to consider a career in geography, a thought that genuinely amused her. It showed a side of Annetta many didn't know, the curious student who never stopped wanting to learn. By the mid-1960s, her career was in full swing. In 1965, she appeared in Death Valley Days playing Kathy McLennan, a young widow trying to navigate life after loss, a role that showed off her dramatic depth. The following years saw her jump from one successful TV show to another, cementing herself as one of the most familiar faces on screen. In The Blue Knight, she played a pawn shop owner who shared a close bond with a police officer named Bumper Morgan. On Adam 12, she appeared as Judy, the girlfriend of Officer Pete Malloy. And in the 1980s, she took on the role of head nurse Bradley in the sitcom House Calls, showing once again her ability to shift effortlessly between comedy and drama. Anetta's connection with Andy Griffith would come full circle yet again in the courtroom drama Matlock, where she appeared in several episodes alongside him. Even decades after Mayberry, their on-screen connection still had that same spark. It felt natural, timeless, and almost nostalgic. Her career was steady, her name respected, and her presence unforgettable. In 1977, she even stepped into one of daytime TV's longest-running soap operas, General Hospital, filling in as nurse Jessie Brewer when the original actress fell ill. It was a testament to her reliability as an actress. Producers knew she could step into any role and make it her own. Anetta's love for storytelling didn't stop at acting. She co-authored the Mystery Reader's Quiz book, adding writer to her already impressive list of achievements. And when the Andy Griffith Show reunion specials rolled around in 1986 and again in 1993, she was right there, graceful as ever, still Helen Crump in every way that mattered. Looking back, her career spanned everything from cult horror to family sitcoms, westerns, and medical dramas. Every project she touched carried a certain grace, an ease that made her feel right at home, no matter the genre. But as remarkable as her body of work was, nothing would define Aneta Corsaut quite like her time in Mayberry, and the secret that followed her long after the show ended. Aneta Corsaut and Andy Griffith, the secret affair that rocked Mayberry. There was a reason Aneta Corsaut and Andy Griffith's chemistry felt so natural on screen. It wasn't just acting, it was real. Behind those warm smiles and gentle glances between Sheriff Andy Taylor and Helen Crump was a love that went far beyond the cameras. What audiences saw as scripted romance was, in truth, a reflection of something else, a quiet affair that became one of Hollywood's most carefully kept secrets. According to the book Andy and Don, The Making of a Friendship and a Classic American TV Show, Annetta and Andy's relationship went far beyond the cameras. They were deeply involved during their time on The Andy Griffith Show, and while they tried to keep it quiet, everyone on set knew what was going on. It was an open secret, one that made a few people on the show uneasy and likely caused plenty of tension at home for Andy, who was still married to his first wife, Barbara Bray Edwards. Their romance began as a behind-the-scenes fling, but it didn't stay casual for long. The connection between them grew intense, so much so that, according to the book's author, Andy couldn't get enough of Annetta. He fell for her hard. At one point, he even proposed to her, despite being married at the time. Annetta, however, turned him down. She reportedly hinted later in life that he might have proposed more than once, maybe even 2 or 3 times. Still, she never said yes. While the rest of Mayberry was caught up in its small-town charm, the real-life drama between its leading man and his on-screen love interest was something straight out of a soap opera. It created an undercurrent of tension that the audience never saw, but those on set could feel. Andy, known for his sense of humor and love of practical jokes, wasn't immune to getting pranked himself. And when the cast and crew learnt about his affair with Annetta, they couldn't resist having a little fun at his expense. According to the book, one night, some crew members pulled a stunt that went a little too far. A young crewman dressed up as a waiter and delivered dinner to the couple's secret Hollywood hideaway. It was meant to be a harmless laugh, but Andy didn't find it funny. He was furious. The prank had crossed a line, exposing just how private and serious the relationship really was. Their secret affair stretched over the 5 years they worked together on The Andy Griffith Show, and while the show never addressed their real-life romance, it quietly fueled the chemistry that fans loved watching on screen. The tenderness, the tension, the glances that lingered just a second too long. It all came from something real. But as with many Hollywood stories, theirs didn't come with a happy ending. Andy stayed married to Barbara during most of the show's run, and though his relationship with Annetta remained close, it never became official. She never married, never had children, and stayed mostly private about her personal life after the show ended. Andy, on the other hand, would go on to marry 3 times. Andy Griffith, the untold story of love, anger, and the women who knew the real sheriff of Mayberry. Andy Griffith will forever be remembered as the calm, kind-hearted Sheriff Andy Taylor, the man who kept Mayberry running. But away from the small-town charm of the Andy Griffith Show, his real life was far more complicated. Behind the smile was a man whose love life had its fair share of heartbreak, anger, and unexpected turns. Griffith's first great love began long before the fame. In the early 1940s, while studying music at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, Andy met Barbara Bray Edwards, a talented soprano with dreams of becoming an opera singer. He was focused on both acting and music, and together, they made quite the pair. The two married on August 22, 1949, and even toured as a musical comedy duo. Their marriage seemed strong, but as fame crept in, so did problems. Over the years, they adopted two children, a son, Andy Samuel Griffith Jr., known as Sam, and a daughter, Dixie Nan Griffith. But behind the family photos and Hollywood smiles, things were falling apart. After 23 years together, the couple divorced in 1972. Sam, their son, went on to become a real estate developer but battled alcoholism for years, tragically passing away in 1996 at just 38 years old. Dixie, on the other hand, stayed out of the spotlight, choosing a quiet life while giving Andy 3 granddaughters. To fans, Andy was the picture of Southern decency, but those who worked with him knew another side. According to Daniel DeVise, author of Andy and Don, Griffith could be charming one moment and terrifying the next. Despite his easygoing on-screen personality, he had a reputation for being a mean drunk. Friends winced at the thought of spending an evening in the Griffith home, the author revealed. George Lindsay, who played Goober Pyle, opened up about it in his 1995 memoir, Goober in a Nutshell, recalling that most of the cast was afraid of Andy. Every Monday night after the show aired, Griffith would call the actors whose performances he liked. If you didn't get a call, you knew you were in trouble. I dreaded going back to work on Tuesday morning, Lindsay confessed. It wasn't just a bad mood here and there, his temper could explode without warning. Insiders claimed Griffith's rage could be unbearable. During one heated argument with his first wife Barbara, he punched right through a car windshield in anger. It was that serious. Eventually, he sought therapy and spent more than a decade in counseling to get his anger under control. Much of that pain traced back to his childhood. Growing up poor in Mount Airy, North Carolina, the town that later inspired Mayberry, Andy often felt like an outsider. He never forgot the sting of being looked down upon for coming from the wrong side of the tracks. That insecurity followed him into adulthood, especially when fame magnified every emotion. He grew particularly bitter about Don Knotts' success, envying the Emmy Awards and critical praise his co-star received for playing the bumbling but lovable Deputy Barney Fife. Yet, ironically, Andy and Don had been inseparable once. They first met in 1955 while starring in the Broadway hit No Time for Sergeants and became fast friends. But the friendship had its wild side. The two men were known for their womanizing ways, partners in crime who often stepped out on their wives and went on double dates with their mistresses. On set, their bond was both brotherly and chaotic. Griffith was notorious for playing pranks on Knotts, calling him Jess, a nickname Don despised, whenever he wanted to annoy him, or dropping heavy metal film canisters while Knotts was napping, just to startle him. Despite the rocky patches years later, the two reconciled. By 2000, Griffith had mellowed out, reflecting fondly on those days. He called their time together the best 5 years of my life. A reminder that even through jealousy and tension, there was real affection between them. After his divorce from Barbara, Andy didn't stay single long. Just a year later, in 1973, he married Sulika Kasuto, a Greek actress and singer. But this marriage was different. Sulika preferred to stay out of the limelight, and unlike Barbara, she rarely appeared publicly with him. The relationship was private and ultimately short-lived. After 8 years together, the two went their separate ways in 1981. Neither ever spoke much about what went wrong, and their years together remain one of the most mysterious chapters of Andy's life. Then came the woman who would stay by his side until the very end. In the early 1980s, while working on the TV movie Murder in Coweta County, Griffith met Cindy Knight, a young actress with a small role in the film. There was an instant connection. She was gentle, kind, and gave Andy something he hadn't felt in years: peace. They married on April 12, 1983, and this time Griffith seemed determined to make it last. Cindy soon left acting to focus on their life together, choosing to stay out of the limelight and support him through both his career and his health struggles. As the years went by, she became his anchor, by his side through illness, surgeries, and eventually the years that led up to his passing in 2012. And yet, no matter how much time passed or how many chapters his life saw, one story always lingered, the one that started it all. The world would forever remember him as the wise, soft-spoken sheriff of Mayberry. But the story behind the Andy Griffith Show wasn't as picture-perfect as the one America saw every week on television. The untold drama behind the Andy Griffith Show, secret feuds, lasting friendships, and heartbreaking goodbyes. When the Andy Griffith Show premiered, no one could have guessed it would become one of the most beloved TV shows in American history. What started as a simple spin-off from The Danny Thomas Show quickly outshined its predecessor. Over 8 seasons, with 159 episodes in black and white and 90 in color, it became a television classic. But while the town of Mayberry looked peaceful on screen, things behind the scenes were far from perfect. At the heart of the show was Andy Griffith himself, playing Sheriff Andy Taylor, the widowed father raising his young son, with help from his Aunt Bee. His loyal but bumbling deputy, Barney Fife, played by Don Knotts, quickly became a fan favorite. But when Knotts first walked onto the set, he didn't even know if he'd be back for another episode. That changed fast. The show's executive producer, Sheldon Leonard, instantly noticed the chemistry between Griffith and Knotts. By the end of that first day, Leonard offered Knotts a 1-year deal. That soon turned into a 5-year contract. And just like that, the duo that would define Mayberry was born. Griffith and Knotts had something special, not just on screen but off it. Both Southern boys with humble beginnings, they understood each other in a way few others did. Their friendship blossomed into one of television's most genuine partnerships. Ron Howard once told Closer Weekly that Andy was Don's biggest fan, recalling that Don had Andy literally in tears once a week. Their laughter was real, their timing effortless, and it showed. But even in Mayberry, things weren't always as warm as they appeared. Despite the laughter, there was tension brewing behind the scenes, especially when it came to money. While the show's success made Andy Griffith one of the highest earners on television, thanks to his 50% ownership stake, Don Knotts was only collecting a regular paycheck. When his 5-year contract came to an end, Knotts asked for a share of the show's profits. He wasn't just Barney Fife. He was a huge part of what made the show a hit, but his request was denied. Feeling underappreciated, Knotts made the tough choice to leave the show. It wasn't because of bad blood. It was because he knew his worth. He moved on, while Andy stayed and carried the show through its final years. The decision broke fans' hearts, but in time, the two men found their way back to each other. Their friendship, though tested, survived. Years later, when Griffith starred in Matlock, Knotts made guest appearances and the old magic returned. They laughed, sang, and joked on set, just like the good old days. One castmate recalled, he'd nail his lines on the first or second take, then do a little jig and make a joke. They fell into this routine of singing, laughing, and telling jokes. Sadly, time caught up with both men. Don Knotts passed away in 2006 from pneumonia. Andy was there by his side and told him he loved him before he took his final breath. 6 years later, in 2012, Andy followed. Though they are both gone, their friendship and the joy they brought to millions still lives on every time a rerun plays. But the drama behind the Andy Griffith Show didn't end with Andy and Don. Even the sweetest faces in Mayberry had their share of tension. Take Frances Bavier, for example, the warm, nurturing Aunt Bee who held the Taylor household together. In real life, Bavier was nothing like her gentle character. A trained stage actress and graduate of the American Academy of Dramatic Arts, she was as serious as they came. She had worked in vaudeville, conquered Broadway, and treated acting as sacred. But on the Mayberry set, that dedication sometimes clashed with Andy's constant joking and pranks. While most of the cast loved to laugh, sing, and dance between takes, Frances wanted no part of it. She hated practical jokes and made her disapproval clear. One story from Mayberry RFD, the sequel series, shows just how fiery she could be. George Lindsay, who played Goober Pyle, had a habit of cursing on set. One day his foul mouth pushed Frances too far, and she stormed over and smacked him with her umbrella. To her, the cast's playful energy felt unprofessional, and it created friction, especially with Griffith. The two reportedly didn't reconcile until near the end of her life, when Frances reached out to apologize. And then there was Howard McNear, the man who brought Floyd the barber to life. Floyd's barbershop was more than just a place for a trim. It was where Mayberry's men gathered to gossip, laugh, and share advice. Howard was beloved both on and off screen, but tragedy struck midway through the series when he suffered a massive stroke. The stroke left him partially paralyzed, unable to stand for long. Most actors would have had to step away for good, but not Howard. The cast and crew loved him too much to write him off. Instead, they adapted. Writers crafted his scenes so he could stay seated, and when standing shots were needed, they used creative camera angles and a custom-built stool to give the illusion of movement. Howard McNear stayed on the show until 1967, and fans never stopped loving him. His strength became part of Mayberry's heart, proof that loyalty and kindness still meant something in Hollywood. Behind the laughter and the whistling theme song, the Andy Griffith Show was filled with passion, pride, and humanity. There were feuds, heartbreaks, and rivalries, but also real friendships, loyalty, and love. Decades later, Mayberry still feels like home to millions. Maybe that's because it wasn't just about small-town life. It was about real people with real flaws, trying to do their best. And that is why the magic of the Andy Griffith Show will never fade. Aneta Corsaut, the woman who loved Andy on and off screen, and the sad truth behind her final days. To millions of fans, Aneta Corsaut will always be remembered as Helen Crump, the intelligent, no-nonsense schoolteacher who captured Sheriff Andy Taylor's heart on the Andy Griffith Show. But Aneta's story didn't end in Mayberry. After the cameras stopped rolling, she kept working, building a career in television, often circling back to the man who had defined so much of her on-screen and off-screen life, Andy Griffith. When the Andy Griffith Show wrapped, Annetta didn't fade into the background. She continued acting through the 1960s, 1970s, and 1980s, bringing her charm to every role. Fans loved seeing her reprise her beloved Helen Crump in reunion specials like Return to Mayberry, keeping that chapter of her life alive. But she also explored new roles in hit shows such as Adam 12, Emergency, and House Calls. Still, her most meaningful return came in the 1980s when she reunited with Andy Griffith once again, this time in his legal drama, Matlock. Andy had a habit of bringing back familiar faces from Mayberry, and he made sure Annetta was one of them. Their bond, even decades after their rumored affair, remained strong. On Matlock, Annetta played Judge Cynthia Justin. She appeared in 7 episodes between 1987 and 1992. 6 of those were as the judge, and once as a character named Sarah Richards. Each time she appeared, fans couldn't help but smile. It was as if Mayberry had found its way into Matlock. Their chemistry was still there, subtle yet undeniable, carrying the same torch that once made viewers fall in love with Helen and Andy. But Annetta wasn't the only familiar face Andy brought back. Don Knotts, the lovable Barney Fife, joined Matlock in 1988, sending a wave of excitement through fans who adored the comedic duo. Andy was thrilled to work with his old friend again, even calling Knotts the best comic actor I ever met, and saying that he played straight for him better than any man in America. For a moment, it felt like Mayberry magic was alive again, but it didn't last. Knotts' character only appeared in 17 episodes before being written out. Andy later explained in a 1998 interview that the lighthearted humor simply didn't fit the tone of Matlock's courtroom drama. It didn't work, he admitted. Fans were disappointed, but the two men remained friends. Another familiar face from Mayberry also joined Matlock, Betty Lynn, who played Thelma Lou, Barney Fife's sweet and loyal girlfriend. Betty appeared in 4 episodes in 1986 as Ben Matlock's secretary. She had hoped it would turn into a longer role, but after asking Griffith for more lines, she was suddenly written off the show. "They let me go as soon as they could," she recalled years later, adding that she was hurt because Andy wouldn't listen. For 2 decades, they didn't speak. But time has a way of softening old wounds. Andy eventually reached out to Betty, calling her in what many believed was his way of making peace. The two rekindled their friendship, and Betty later shared that they remained close until his passing in 2012. Through it all, Annetta stayed active even after her role in Matlock. Sadly, her story took a heartbreaking turn. In 1995, just 3 days after her 62nd birthday, Aneta Corsaut passed away from cancer in Los Angeles. Her death shocked fans and left a silence that Mayberry never quite filled again. She was laid to rest at Valhalla Memorial Park Cemetery in North Hollywood, California, a fittingly serene resting place for a woman who touched millions. Even though she left this world too soon, Anetta's legacy continues to live on every time someone tunes in to watch The Andy Griffith Show. She wasn't just Helen Crump, the beloved school teacher who captured Sheriff Andy Taylor's heart. She was the woman who brought warmth and sincerity to every scene, the actress who shared a genuine bond with her co-star, and the quiet force who gave Mayberry its heart and soul. Andy Griffith's own story came full circle years later. In his final years, he had slowed down but never truly stepped away from the work that defined him. He occasionally appeared in TV projects and spent most of his time at his coastal home in Manteo, North Carolina. Music also became a big part of his later life. He released several gospel and country albums, including I Love to Tell the Story, 25 timeless hymns, which earned him a Grammy Award in 1997. But behind the public image, his health was in steady decline. Griffith had suffered from heart problems for years, undergoing quadruple bypass surgery in 2000. He faced a series of illnesses in the following decade, yet remained determined to live quietly on Roanoke Island with his wife Cindy Knight by his side. On July 3, 2012, Andy Griffith passed away at the age of 86 from a heart attack. His death marked the end of an era, but his legacy, like Anetta's, has never faded. Are you still a fan of The Andy Griffith Show to this very day? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Also, click the next video shown on your screen. You will enjoy it.